There's a moment in every life where the chaos gets too loud, the pain too sharp, the path too dark to follow. It's in that moment, not of weakness, but of choice, that something shifts. You stop fighting the storm, and instead, you let the storm teach you. Letting go isn't giving up, it's giving in to growth, to transformation, to fire that does not destroy but refines. Take the Joker, not the villain, but the symbol, a man who broke, then rebuilt. The world saw madness, but behind the scars was method. Behind the pain, a process. The Joker didn't find peace by controlling the world. He found power when he stopped trying to be what the world demanded. So what happens when you let something greater take the reins? Not defined by religion, but by resolve? Here's what happens. The psychology of surrender is a deeply transformative concept rooted in both clinical psychology and human experience. At its core, surrender does not equate to defeat. It represents a conscious decision to release control over outcomes that are beyond one's influence. This mindset shift has been found to significantly reduce psychological stress and increase emotional resilience. In therapeutic frameworks such as acceptance and commitment therapy (ACT) and cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT, the process of surrendering control is seen as an active choice that allows the mind to focus on what can be influenced, our thoughts, responses, and interpretations, rather than obsess over what cannot be changed. People who embrace this philosophy are better equipped to deal with uncertainty, failure, and adversity. When an individual experiences a crisis, be it emotional, relational, financial, or existential, the first instinct is often to grasp for control. We create rigid expectations, assume outcomes, and try to force stability into unpredictable situations. However, control, in many cases, is an illusion. Life's greatest variables, other people's decisions, market changes, accidents, timing, are often outside our control. Psychology teaches us that obsessive control can lead to anxiety, burnout, and even depression. Surrendering in this context is not passivity, it is the cognitive recognition that peace comes not from managing the storm, but from managing our internal response to it. This mindset parallels a principle found in Stoic philosophy: focus on what you can control, accept what you cannot. It is also closely aligned with the concept of radical acceptance in dialectical behavior therapy (DBT). Both ideas suggest that resisting reality increases suffering. When people let go of the need to control and instead accept their current reality, their psychological load decreases. This, in turn, creates space for clarity, creativity, and decision-making. Surrender becomes the breeding ground for adaptation, not avoidance. Neurologically, this act of surrender is beneficial as well. Studies show that when individuals practice letting go through mindfulness, meditation, or prayer, their brain's default mode network associated with rumination and self-focus deactivates, while areas responsible for compassion, empathy, and emotional regulation become more active. This shift in brain activity results in improved mood, emotional resilience, and even better physical health outcomes, including reduced blood pressure and lower cortisol levels. In other words, letting go is not just an emotional process. It is a physiological one. Surrender also fosters growth by reframing how we view failure and pain. When people try to control everything, they often interpret failure as a personal flaw or cosmic punishment. But when they adopt a surrendered mindset, they begin to see failure as feedback. This change in perception makes a significant difference in long-term emotional health. For example, individuals who view a breakup or job loss as a necessary redirection rather than a defeat are more likely to bounce back, re-strategize, and improve their life trajectory. They are not consumed by the event because they believe it fits into a larger picture, even if they don't see that picture yet. Importantly, surrender is not synonymous with indifference. It is, in fact, a deeply intentional act. To surrender means to trust that your efforts, while important, are not the only force shaping your future. This perspective cultivates patience and humility. You no longer rely solely on your own strength, but remain open to the idea that life, the universe, or a guiding principle without needing to name it is orchestrating events in a way that might serve your highest good, even if you don't understand it in the moment. This belief, in turn, impacts behavior. People who adopt this surrendered mindset tend to exhibit greater empathy, less judgment toward others, and a more flexible approach to relationships and problem solving. They're less likely to fall into binary thinking, good or bad, success or failure, and more likely to explore nuance. This cognitive flexibility enhances emotional intelligence, a key predictor of success in both personal and professional domains. In practical terms, surrender can be cultivated through daily habits such as reflective journaling, mindfulness practices, or simply pausing in moments of stress to ask, is this something I can control or not? This small act of self-awareness disrupts automatic stress responses and opens the door to wiser action. Over time, this becomes a lifestyle, a way of thinking that frames every obstacle not as a dead end, but as part of a longer, unfolding journey. Ultimately, surrender does not mean disengagement from life's challenges. It means facing them with the confidence that you are not alone in the process. Whether you call it alignment, flow, or unseen support, the psychology of surrender teaches us that we are most empowered not when we grip tighter, but when we release, strategically, intelligently, and with trust. Transformation through adversity is a well-documented psychological and sociological phenomenon, often referred to as post-traumatic growth, PTG. Unlike resilience, which is the ability to bounce back, PTG refers to the capacity to bounce forward, emerging from hardship with a deeper appreciation for life, clearer priorities, stronger relationships, and a greater sense of inner strength. This growth does not happen automatically. It is a product of cognitive processing, emotional integration, and intentional reframing. When a person experiences intense suffering, the pain disrupts their assumptions about life, identity, and safety. While this disruption is uncomfortable, it creates a unique opening for reconstruction of belief systems, purpose, and self-concept. Biologically and neurologically, adversity triggers the stress response in the brain, particularly activating the amygdala and hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal HPA axis. This response, if chronic, can be harmful. However, with the right support and mindset, it also initiates neuroplastic changes that foster adaptive learning. When individuals reflect on their suffering, process their emotions, and reframe the narrative, they lay new neural pathways that are associated with wisdom, empathy, and emotional regulation. In this sense, adversity becomes a psychological crucible, not just something one survives, but something one is shaped by. Culturally, this concept is embedded in countless metaphors. Diamonds formed under pressure, gold refined by fire, lotus flowers blooming in muddy water. These are not merely poetic symbols, they reflect real psychological truths. In adversity, the ego, our carefully constructed identity, often cracks. And while this may feel like collapse, it is also the space where deeper truths emerge. In the absence of external validation, People are forced to ask deeper internal questions. Who am I without this role, this relationship, this title? What truly matters to me? What kind of life do I want to live from this moment on? In the educational and therapeutic realm, trauma survivors often report that after working through pain, they gain a sharper sense of purpose. Many say their values change. They become less interested in superficial success and more focused on meaning, service, and relationships. This is supported by longitudinal studies in clinical psychology, which show that individuals who face life-threatening illness, loss, or crisis and engage in reflection and healing work often report higher levels of life satisfaction 5 to 10 years later than before the event occurred. A key factor in transformation is the person's response to adversity, not the adversity itself. Two people can experience the same hardship, say, job loss or betrayal, and one may spiral into despair while the other rises into a stronger, wiser version of themselves. The difference lies in mindset, support systems, and personal narrative. Those who transform adversity tend to ask empowering questions like, what can I learn from this? Or how can I grow because of this? They resist victimhood not by denying their pain, but by refusing to be defined by it. This approach to adversity is also enhanced by practices like journaling, therapy, and storytelling. When people articulate their pain through writing, speaking, or creating, they externalize internal chaos. They give shape to their suffering, and in doing so, they gain agency over it. Narrating one's pain is not about dramatizing it, but about organizing it into something meaningful. That meaning becomes a blueprint for transformation. It is no longer, this happened to me, but this happened, and here is what I've built from it. Adversity also reveals hidden strengths. In situations of extreme stress, people often discover courage they didn't know they had. They become more resourceful, more compassionate, more emotionally intelligent. For example, someone who grew up in an unstable household may develop a strong intuition about people's emotions, not as a conscious skill, but as a survival mechanism that later becomes emotional insight in adulthood. What once felt like damage becomes the foundation of wisdom. Pain, in this way, is not erased. It is recycled into power. Another dimension of transformation through adversity is perspective shift. When someone walks through fire and survives, everyday frustrations lose their grip. The small things that used to cause stress, traffic, gossip, minor setbacks, begin to seem irrelevant. This widened perspective often leads to gratitude, a quality deeply correlated with mental well-being. People stop taking peace, health, and love for granted because they've known the absence of these things. This is why trauma, when processed, doesn't just create survivors. It creates sages. Even in developmental psychology, we see that identity is often clarified during crises. Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development show that identity and role confusion are resolved through challenges. It's during transitions, such as adolescence, career change, or grief, that people refine their sense of self. The adversity acts as a sculptor, carving away what is inauthentic, shaping what remains into something truer. In this sense, adversity is not an interruption of the path, it becomes the path. Thus, the fire doesn't just burn, it molds. The pain doesn't just break, it awakens. And transformation is not about forgetting the darkness, but learning to carry the light that was discovered in it.